Please take your seats. The meeting is about to begin. Remember to speak into the microphone, as this meeting is being recorded for public record. Please stand by. We are going on air in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Okay, good morning, everybody. And as Yashil's my favorite line, welcome to the May 6th Planning Board meeting. Pretty short agenda, so it should be a quick day today, but we'll start with a motion from one of my board members to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Motion to approve?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Turn it over to City Attorney.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Today's meeting of the Planning Board will be conducted in a hybrid format, with the board physically present in the commission chambers at Miami Beach City Hall, and applicant, staff, and members of the public appearing either in person or virtually via Zoom. To participate virtually, the public may dial 1-877-853-5257 and enter the webinar ID, which is 613426327#, or log into the Zoom app and enter the webinar ID, which again is 861-4342-6327. If you're wishing to speak on an item, you can click the raise hand icon in the Zoom app or dial *9 if you're participating by phone. If you're appearing on behalf of a business, a corporation, or another person, you need to register as a lobbyist with the city clerk's office. If you haven't registered yet, you should register before you speak to the board. You don't have to register as a lobbyist if you're speaking only on behalf of yourself and not any other party, or if you're testifying as an expert witness providing only scientific, technical, or other specialized information or testimony in this public meeting, or if you're appearing as a representative of a neighborhood association without any compensation or reimbursement for your appearance, to express support of or opposition to any item. Expert witnesses and representatives of neighborhood associations shall, prior to appearing, disclose in writing to the city clerk their name, address, and the principal on whose behalf they're communicating. If you're an architect, attorney, or employee representing an applicant or an objector, you must register as a lobbyist. These rules apply whether you're appearing in favor of or against an item, or encouraging or arguing against its passage, defeat, modification, or continuance. And lastly, I'd like to swear in any members of the public or staff who will be testifying today. Please raise your right hands. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you'll give in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Okay, we'll start with the request for continuous. Michael, do we need to do each Lincoln Road separately?
We can do the Lincoln Road East and West separately, so we'll need one motion for each, the east
Okay.
and one motion for the west.
All right, so the first is Planning Board File 250737, Lincoln Road West Residential Use Incentives.
And we'll take that as well with PB 24-0731, the LDR amendments. The request here is to continue this to the December 9th meeting. And we should ask if there's any public comment on the request for continuance.
Okay, is anyone here to speak on this? Anyone on Zoom?
There's nobody on Zoom with their hand raised.
Okay, so we'll close the, you want to just share real quick why they're moving to continue it?
The commission sponsors requested that these be continued till December.
Okay,
Motion to approve?
I'll second that.
okay, all in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay, that's to December, correct?
That's correct, the December 9th meeting.
Okay, so that's items 2 and 3.
December 9th,
Okay, and that was 0737 and 0731, correct?
correct.
Okay, the next one is Planning Board File 0738, Lincoln Road East Residential Uses, and I'm assuming that's companion with 0739.
That's correct, and these are for Lincoln Road East, the comprehensive plan amendments and the LDR amendments. Again, the request is continue this to the December 9th meeting.
Okay, anyone here to speak on that item? Anyone on Zoom?
There's nobody on Zoom with their hand raised?
Okay, any questions, want to motion it?
Motion to approve?
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. The next one is Planning Board File 250747, Vendor Appointments to Land Use Boards.
I'm requesting that this be continued to the June 10th meeting. We're still working on the ordinance, so we're asking the board to continue this item.
Was that again, vendor appointments? What does that
It's-
mean?
It's,
So this ordinance relates to the appointment of a vendor or an employee of a city vendor to our land use boards.
Like, is it possible conflicts or something?
Correct. It would be
Okay.
to address possible conflicts.
Okay.
Up to now, that wasn't allowed, right? So you guys are trying to add that into, or?
There are rules at the county and state level that apply to appointments of vendors to boards, and this would adopt a tighter standard for the city.
So tighter, okay.
Anyone to speak on this item? Anyone on Zoom?
there's nobody on Zoom?
Okay. Someone want to move it?
Motion to approve?
I'll second that.
Okay, anyone, all in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay. And the last motion to continue is Planning Board File 220539, 660 Washington Avenue, the Anglers Hotel.
And actually, this is just an announcement. Again, this is for PB 22-0539 for 600 to 660 Washington Avenue, the Anglers Hotel. The applicant has withdrawn this application, so there's no action needed by the board.
Okay.
And before we start the progress reports, I'd like to note that we've removed 400 Collins Avenue, the parking lot, which is PB file number 2046. We've removed that from the agenda. The board may remember last month, it was continued till today's date. However, if the applicant satisfied the conditions were in the landscaping and the maintenance agreement, we could take it off the agenda. They just complied with the condition yesterday, so we're removing the item
Item
from the
10.
agenda.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, then we're on to the first progress report is for Planning Board File 220553, 455 Lincoln Road.
So just for some history on this application, The board approved a conditional use permit for a neighborhood impact establishment at this location on November 22nd of 2022. On October 28th of last year, a BTR was issued for the restaurant with entertainment. As a condition of the operation, the applicant had to come before the board for a progress report after the BTR was issued. They did that on February 4th of this year. As noted when this application was heard by the board in February, there were violations issued regarding performers outside on the property, as well as for benches and tables in the right-of-way. And at the last meeting, the board continued the progress report to today's date. Since the meeting in February, there's been additional violations issued, and this was for having entertainment in the form of a DJ at the rooftop. Now, the board may remember, as indicated on page 18 of the board packages, which is page 4 of the final order, there are clear conditions regarding operations of the rooftop. The condition is saying that in terms of the entertainment is prohibited in all outdoor areas, and only background music is allowed on the rooftop level. It also says that a DJ or live performance is only allowed in the interior of the restaurant only, and that sound from the interior shall not be audible at any time from the exterior. In this case, they had a DJ that was louder than ambient level on the rooftop, and that's why the violation was issued. And because of this, as well as the violations that was issued in February, we are recommending that the board set a revocation modification hearing for the July 1st planning board meeting. I'll turn it over to the applicant for their response.
All right, yeah, because I remember the last violations weren't so bad and there was corrective action, and disappointing to hear there was a DJ outside, but let's hear it.
So good morning, Michael Yiannopoulos, 200 South Biscayne Boulevard, joined today by my colleagues Michael Larkin and Emily Balter. We're also joined by Jose Ajke, he's the Vice President and General Manager of the restaurant, and Alan Kodari, the owner. We were before you on March 4th to discuss this, and as you guys mentioned, there were minor incidents which had since been resolved. I'm going to go through a quick presentation. I'm not going to go through the history or anything. I just want to show you what the rooftop looks like. This is the rooftop terrace. As you can see on the screen, the bar is strategically located against and positioned near the entrance of the rooftop to keep noise down. The remainder of the rooftop is dedicated to seating, offering guests unobstructed panoramic views of the wonderful city and Lincoln Road. Here on the screen is what the rooftop looks like today. Again, it's very festive. These are actual photos showing showcasing a lively atmosphere. And an ideal setting to enjoy lunch, dinner with a family and friends. Here on the screen is the operations plan. The restaurant is closed Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, but the schedule changes. They are, during the week, they're occupying about 40 to 50%, and on the weekends, they're 100% occupied, which brings in a lot of visitors into Lincoln Road and the city of Miami Beach. Now, we'll go back to the violation. They did have a live music DJ, which is the reason why they received a violation. This notably was on March 27th, which is the same week as Miami Music Week, which we know is a time of increased activity and outdoor music across the area. The violation stemmed from an honest misunderstanding because of other venues in the area were hosting events and doing things with live music. They mistakenly believed that they didn't need a special permit for this. As soon as the inspector came in and notified them that this was a violation of the CUP, they immediately stopped all music. So they took immediate corrective action. The fine was promptly paid, so indicating a good faith effort to comply, and no further violations have been issued since. As I mentioned previously, the incident was isolated and unintentional. The restaurant has shown a clear commitment to compliance. They have, with Jose here, we've created a sheet, so he's gone and given one to every single employee of the restaurant, so everybody's very aware of all the conditions in the CUP, when music can be played, when music can't be played, where it can be played and where it can't be played beyond ambient levels. And so we're working together with staff to make sure that nothing else and no further instances arise from this.
Okay, Michael, this is me speaking for one person, but you recommend a revocation. Can we do, is it possible to set up another progress report?
Well, we're
Is that an
recommending.
option? I know what you're recommending. I'm asking if the board decides to want another progress
Yeah,
report.
the board could just continue it and have another progress
All
report.
right. All right, I just had a question. Okay, anybody here to speak on this in the chamber? Anyone on Zoom?
So if I may, I can introduce
Oh,
Jose.
sure. Just give me 1 second.
There's nobody on Zoom with
Okay.
their hand raised.
Go ahead, sir.
Hi, how are you? I'm just here to confirm that the team and the restaurant is now in full compliance on the CUP, and we are working on getting everything cleared, and it was a honest mistake on our part.
Yep.
It's,
Okay.
it's not gonna happen again.
All right, I'm just gonna give you my thought. Listen, I know this restaurant well. I've been to it in Columbia many times. I think it's a great addition to Lincoln Road. We want you to survive, okay? I don't wanna close you down. I don't wanna take away your entertainment. This is just me speaking. We'll let everyone else speak. I don't want a revocation hearing. I want another progress report. But you really gotta make sure that there's no more violations. That's just my view. Okay, because again, I know how tough it is in this environment to make it. There's a million restaurants opening all over the city. This is a great addition to Lincoln Road. I think I've been there and I think it's a great venue. Okay, and I really want you to succeed, but you really got to behave. And I believe you're sincere in fixing it, but I just want, that's my viewpoint, okay? Because I want to give you every opportunity. But obviously the conditional use permit says only inside. I understand if it was Music Week, but I think anything where you deviate from your conditional use permit, you've got to either get permission from the city or somebody, but you can't just assume that you can violate it for a given event, okay? Just my thoughts. Anyway, we'll start with Keith at the end.
Well, as a resident who lives across from a rooftop at Catch, you know, it's very important. I assume we can assume it was a mistake. I do agree that we shouldn't revoke immediately, but I think this is a case not of 3 strikes but 1 strike. It should never happen again. I mean, we put controls on rooftops. Normally, it should be, if you're going to allow any music, it's got to be background ambient, and definitely try to control the inside too, because I noticed you had a violation on 222 where even on the inside it was too loud. I don't know the exact location, but I assume there are neighbors, and you just have to be respectful of the fact that you're not out in a field. You know, it's not a industrial area. There's residents around there, and just be respectful, but have fun. And we have lots of restaurants with rooftops that operate fine. So just know your cup, and don't do it again.
Yeah, you know, we did hear when you were here in March that, I mean, what you just said is basically what you said in March. You weren't, you knew and weren't totally up on all the requirements of the CUP, and we're just hearing that again today. So, Keith, you mentioned strike 1. This is actually strike 2. So, I mean, but I'm not in favor of setting a revocation here, and you're still a new operator. I do think we should keep it on our radar. You'll be back for another progress report, but, you know, if there's more other violations, I think at that point, this board's going to take more severe action than we're probably going to take today. So just be careful going forward.
I just, real quick, I echo what Brian said. You took my idea, which was to come up with a sheet and give it out to all your staff, so I think that's a great idea. I'm glad you guys did it. The only thing I'll caution you on is because we've seen this in the past, which is when there's a change in management. So if you were to, you know, move to a different post with the restaurant group and somebody else came in for the summer, for example, if there's another violation in the summer, it's not an excuse that the new manager wasn't here earlier, and so just keep in mind, you know, continuously update your staff, because this record of these violations, they stay on the record, and so we're looking at it based on the number of strikes, not based on the particular manager or the staff that they had at the time. So just keep in mind moving forward when there is a transition in staff, because I know you guys are new in Miami Beach, but very experienced elsewhere. Just make sure to educate the future staff coming in.
No additional comments. I'm in favor of a progress report, not a revocation. Just one more thing, the ignorance excuse can only be used so many times. So just please, let's make sure that this does not become a pattern.
Melissa?
Just like my colleagues, I think the revocation is too much. I think you guys should be getting some clarity here on how we need to behave. Last time was a little different. You guys had someone standing outside, I think, with some promotional stuff. I can see that being an honest mistake. Having a DJ on a rooftop is a little bit, or raise my eyebrows a little bit, that you guys did not know. But just like my colleagues, we want to see you succeed, and we'll hopefully see you guys in a couple months with no other issues.
I concur with them. I just see that there's a couple of violations prior to this one in March, and there was immediate compliance, but I just like to not see continuous violations at all. Because these are conditional permits. But I love the restaurant, so.
Thank you.
All right, so I think you hear the message. We want you to do well. We want you to have fun. Just please, you're gonna come, we're gonna bring you back just to see if there's any more violations. Go ahead.
That's why, actually, I'm one of the VPs of the company.
Yeah.
That's why I got transferred to Miami, just to make sure that we are in compliance and we are doing the things right,
Okay.
just to assure that.
And if you have questions about, you ask your attorneys about the.
I call him all the time.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Okay, someone want to move what, I think the motion, if I'm hearing properly, is that we'll move it for a progress report, and it's a question about whether you want a month or 2 months out. Say
2 months.
2 months, okay. So we're going to give you 2 months, and hopefully you'll come back, and the lawyer will say we have no problems, okay? All right, so Jonathan, you want to move it?
Yeah, move, motion to continue the progress report for 60 days, or for 2 planning board meetings from now.
So it'd be April.
Second.
It'd be a continuance to the
60
July
days.
1st
July.
planning board.
Sure.
Second.
Okay, we have a second from Shields, so all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, next, status report, progress report. Planning board filed 2846, 400 Collins Avenue, oh, I'm sorry, 240680, 2201 Collins Avenue, the W Hotel.
And this progress report begins on page 31 of the board packages. The board may remember that on July 30th of last year, the planning board approved a modification to the CUP to allow any future change of owners or operators to submit an affidavit. That affidavit was submitted for a change of ownership on November 25th of last year. And that requires that the applicant come before the board as a new owner for a progress report within a certain time frame. That's why the applicant is on the agenda today for a progress report based upon this change of ownership. However, we did note that there was a noise complaint related to a special event permit regarding loud noise that was in violation of the special event permit on December 8th of last year. Because of that, we are recommending that the board hear testimony from the applicant, the public, and continue this as a progress report to the June 10th meeting.
Mr. Chair, distinguished board members, James Rao with Greensville Marner, offices at 600 Brickell Avenue, here with my co-counsel, Alfredo Gonzalez from Grimberg Traurig. We are here on behalf of 2201 Collins Propco LLC. As the staff indicated, our client recently purchased the property. We submitted the required transfer affidavit following the closing of that transaction, and we're here to comply with condition 2 of the CUP to present a progress report. You may have read about the transaction in the media, a substantial transaction, and we're very happy that our client made that investment in Miami Beach. As the staff report indicates, they've identified that there was a noise warning in conjunction with a special event. It was issued to the hotel management company. There have been no violations issued to this owner. And
So that predated the acquisition?
it did not predate the acquisition, it just happened to be issued to the hotel management company. So in this case, we don't believe there's been a violation of the CUP at this point, and we're happy to, of course, happy to come back if there were a violation issued. going forward. But at this point, we just ask that, that they only be required to return for a progress report if there's another violation issued and.
Right, so this is the required change of ownership come for a first progress report?
Yes, sir.
Right? Okay.
Yes, sir. We're just meeting the requirement condition 2 to have a progress report following the real estate transaction. And as Alfredo will explain.
I'm
if
just
you'd
trying to
like
understand, since the acquisition, there's been no violations issued to the owner, the new owners, is that?
Just to the hotel
the
management
management
company.
company, okay.
But that was after the transaction, there was a violation issued to the hotel management company for a special event permit violation. And there was a noise warning, also issued to the hotel management company. And as Alfredo can explain to you, depending on how much you'd like to get into it, this
Well, just a little bit,
property-
because I hate to bring you back, we don't have to, I just want to understand, you know, like what exactly, go ahead, Alfredo.
And good morning, Alfredo Gonzalez for the record. And I could talk about the noise warnings that were issued and the special event violation as a result of having noise warning that was issued on beginning of December. The property had changed hands. The city cited the operator, the Marriott, who has been operating the property for the last 14 years, still operating it today, and issued it to the old owner. So I'm assuming that when they looked at property appraiser, they looked at they didn't have the updated information. But to be clear, that noise warning was issued as part of a special event permit, not having to do with the rights, privileges that this board is given as part of the CUP. The special event violation is under appeal. I represent the owners as well, and we filed an appeal. Because we cannot appeal today the noise warning and have a full discussion on the merits of that, if it was justified or not, because the only way you could appeal the noise warning is if our client gets a noise violation, that gives me then the standing to appeal. The special magistrate deferred a ruling on the special event violation till next December to see if in between now and next December, the hotel's issued a violation, and then there's an ability to appeal. But all that occurred as part of a special event permit, and it was actually early in the evening.
Not their normal
Not their,
operation.
not part of the hotel activity or CUP. They had a issued special event permit
Right.
that could operate till 11:30. They actually finished the event at 10:45. I guess as code was
All right,
arriving.
and that was December, now we're 5
And that was
months later,
December. 5
nothing's
months,
happened,
nothing's
no
happened.
problems?
The property is actually in the midst of, we're meeting with Michael and other planning staff for renovations. There's probably gonna be a modification to the CUP coming with enhancements, later
You'll have
this
to
year.
come before us again.
Before you, before this board and before HPB. So, and quite frankly, I think that the Doubly Hotel, in the 14 years they've had the CUP, they're your model case. We've never had to, I've represented them since the original CUP.
Right, just that one issue.
And they've never had a revocation hearing in over 14 years. So they've been following and diligently following all the rules.
got
So
it.
we're asking that we had to come in for the progress report because of the change of owners, but that we shouldn't have another progress report unless, God forbid, there was some kind of violation, then
Right,
yes.
but then you'll be back with a modified CUP request.
Late, yes, at a later
Okay.
point.
All right, got it. All
So
right,
you'll see it either way.
all right. Anybody else in here to speak on this? Anyone on Zoom?
There's nobody on Zoom, but I'd like to make one correction just in terms of the violation.
Sure.
Just reading plainly from the language of the CUP, it says,
Where are you reading from, Michael?
This is
Page
under condition
32.
number 10.
I think.
A violation of Chapter 46, Article 4, noise of the City Code of Miami Beach may be amended from time to time, inclusive of violations which occur during either city-approved special events or private events/functions shall be deemed a violation of this conditional use permit. So just want to be clear that a violation of the special event permit is a violation of the CUP.
No, I understand that.
I just was correcting something that Alfredo stated.
Oh, okay.
We have no objection if the board wants to, they've done in the past, say that provided that no violation is issued between now and, say, July, that we take this off the agenda as a
That's what I want to recommend we do, but I'll make sure everyone else, is there any discussion, does anybody agree with that we can move it to July and
In any
if
case,
there's no
a-
violations?
My
they'll-
preference.
Okay.
If there's any violation, you know, between, they will be back in front of us anyways, right? Right.
Can I ask, I mean, I have a question. What was the difference, I mean, you've had plenty of parties there, you know, special events there in the past. Like, what was the difference between, with this one, why there was a, you know, the loud music?
Quite frankly, in working with the operators, it was one of the Art Basel, Bonvoy, Art Amex event that was happening. They were monitoring, because they actually, we've worked with them on other events where they went off site and they made sure if they thought the music was too loud, they kept lowering it. So we don't understand, as the event was shutting down, because if you look at the timing, the officer showed up at 10:26. It wasn't until 10:45 that he came in to say, yeah, I think your music is too loud. The event was over. So he actually asked the operator, could you restart the party so I could, you know, show you and evaluate, but the party was over. So could that, in the process of shutting down, it spiked or something? I don't know. We haven't had the opportunity to fully go back and forth on that issue.
All right, so you're appealing that. Bottom line is, we're gonna, I guess it'll be on the agenda, but if you have no violations by July, then they'll remove it from the agenda.
Can I just ask though, is there any issue, I'm cool with that. I just wanted to ask about the issue, the fact that the special event was issued to the operator, right? Not the CUP holder, right?
That's a technicality. I mean, that's something that the applicant has used at the special magistrate to void a citation.
And we've heard that argument before, and I guess my question is moving forward, how do we fix that in CUPs so that there's no issue there?
I think what happened here is because the affidavit was issued like a week or so before the violation occurred, so there was that.
Right, they would have given it to the CUP holder. They just gave it to the wrong entity because they didn't know it had been sold.
Correct.
Right. So
And the reason it's under,
It was on, code could have given it to the CUP.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that was like a code mistake, I guess. I mean, I don't answer
And
that.
just so you know, that's not the basis for the appeal.
Right.
No, that's okay.
But I could clarify for you. What happened was Marriott, who is the operator of the hotel, the entire part for the W, has been for over 14 years. They're the ones that apply for the special event. So all the special, if you were to, I have a copy of the special event from that night. It was applied for by the Marriott.
Right, but to Jonathan's point, we don't care. If it's a violation, it's a violation, but.
I'm just going way
Right.
back to like my first year on the planning board when we had like the MA or ESMA,
Oh, it was a rooftop, actually, your
no,
other
no,
client,
no,
where you had the
don't-
operator and the owner.
Don't remind me about that one.
No, but I know what you're saying.
I just want to make sure, like, you know, moving forward, we've fixed that, the issue, but it sounds like there is an understanding of the issue and we're good. Okay.
All right, any other questions? Someone want to move it? And the motion would be to keep it on the agenda, but if there's no violations through July, they'll remove it from the
So
agenda.
moved.
Okay, Jonathan, second, Yashil. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Sorry.
So July or June? Because July 1st?
Or
Okay.
July
Right, and if
1st.
there's no violations, like the other, they'll remove it from the agenda, but
And
we're
we
gonna
won't be
keep it on the agenda in case there's a violation.
Thank you
All right.
very much.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. All right, on to new comprehensive planning code amendments. Planning Board File 250752, land use incentives for school and educational facilities.
And we're going to take this in companionship with PB 25-0761, which is Comprehensive Plan Floor Area Ratio Incentives. And this staff report begins on page 47 of the board packages. And by just some way of history, the Land Use and Sustainability Committee reviewed the ordinances on January 16th of this year and recommended that they be referred to the planning board. And on March 19th, the city commission referred these ordinances to the planning board. So currently, education uses are permitted as a conditional use in multifamily commercial districts throughout the city. In response to recommendations of the Land Use and Sustainability Committee, these attached ordinance provide some incentives to remove the barriers for expansion or for the creation of new schools. This includes new construction of educational facilities subject to staff review, provided the following thresholds are met. First would be new constructions not exceeding 25,000 square feet. could be approved at staff level, provided it does not exceed the underlying FAR for the zoning district. Second, the maximum building height could not exceed 50 feet or the underlying height for the zoning district. It also would still require that when any demolition is involved, would require review by the Historic Preservation Board for any demolition. It also allows for such facilities to request through a commission warrant process an additional FAR. That's the comprehensive plan amendment that's attached, is to allow the city commission to grant a FAR bonus of up to 5,000 square feet, not to exceed 10% through that commission warrant process. It also allows, through that commission warrant process, a reduction in the required setbacks, open space, and lot coverage requirements. It also allows educational facilities that may be in a commercial district not to require planning board approval if they are less than 50,000 square feet. It also would remove the off-street parking requirement for educational facilities. It would also allow them to provide parking without penalizing them in the FAR. We are recommending that, this legislation has been developed with an intention to foster educational facilities expansion and new educational facilities on the beach. So I'm recommending the city commission, that the planning board transmit both these ordinances to the city commission with a favorable recommendation. Now, just to be clear, the LDR text amendments, which is PB 24-0752, this is specifically for schools. The comprehensive plan amendment for the increase of FAR, that would allow not only schools, but through whatever the commission felt was appropriate, would allow the commission to allow increase FAR up to 10%, not to exceed 5,000 square feet for other projects as well.
For any use?
For what?
For any use?
For whatever the process the commission deemed was appropriate, would allow the city commission to expand the FAR up to 10%, not to exceed 5,000 square feet.
But apply
but
to
for
anything,
any
not
use.
education,
Right.
still education buildings,
Yes.
or any type?
Any use that the commission
Will
felt
determine.
was determined, right. That was developed with the school incentives in mind, but it was developed as a more broader incentive for other uses as well.
And just to be clear, the more restrictive requirements in the land development regulations would always control. I think the idea is to amend the comp plan once and.
Correct, right.
Anyone in chamber speak on this? Anyone on Zoom?
There's nobody on Zoom with their hand raised?
Okay. Board questions, comments?
I've got one.
Just one concern. I'm generally in favor of the idea and the sort of the requirements or the way it's worded. But my concern is because it applies everywhere, or anywhere in commercial or multifamily districts. I'm thinking of the RM1 district, and I'm thinking specifically Flamingo Park, but there's also another large RM1 district up in North Beach. And I'm just envisioning this. Let's just something on maybe a property on Meridian or Euclid, right in the middle of the neighborhood. There's an old building and somebody wants to buy that and they want to put a school there. They can add to the building. They could take away a lot of green space. They can put a much more intense use there. They don't have to have parking. And I'm just thinking how that might affect neighbors. It just seems like it's it's incentivizing a rather intense use in the middle of a residential neighborhood. I'm wondering if we can exempt RM1 from this.
I would go with all residential, RM2 and 3.
I mean, I
It's
looked at
pretty
the
much
zoning map,
the-
I was focusing more on Flamingo Park. I think there's only a tiny 2 or 3 block section of RM2, but I mean, we can look at that as well. But I do think, because I like the idea, I like how they're incentivizing schools, but when you look at, decreasing setbacks, decreasing open space, no parking requirements.
But again, just to be clear, those reduction would be through the commission warrant process. So
Correct.
it still would be a public hearing before the city commission.
Correct, but it still could happen, is what I'm getting at. And I'm just envisioning worst-case scenario in the middle of an RM1 district or possibly an RM2 district.
And 3, which is almost the whole,
Would they have to get approval, I mean, from either planning board to open up a school?
No.
So any sort of I mean, because I guess I'm wondering whether there's going to be an opportunity for neighbors to object.
It would only be if they go through the commission warrant process and are asking for reduction in setbacks, open space requirements. But if they complied with the code and didn't ask for additional relaxation in the setbacks, then potentially an expansion or a new construction could be approved administratively.
And remember, we can send it favorably with a separate motion suggesting or recommending, that it exclude.
I'd like at the very minimum to take out the RM1 district.
And what are your
and
thoughts
I'll
about
leave
that,
it.
Michael?
I think that's reasonable. That's where you would have the biggest impact is in the RM1 low-intensity multifamily district.
Okay, we'll take in any other comments?
Is there a certain project that's pushing for this, or?
I don't
Any
think
other
there's a
background
particular
yet?
project. I think this was thought of as comprehensive. It's not focused on one particular district.
So purely just to incentivize, I guess, additional education build-out?
Correct,
so
yes.
what
So
school?
then what's the reason for, I guess, also including in here as part of, the companion, that they would have the ability to increase FAR elsewhere?
Right,
That's one of the, though, I think just because for amending the comprehensive plan, then it's doing it one time versus having to come back to amend it for then, another use.
No, whereas if we specified that this was just for education use, then it would apply to
Yeah, that could
any
be
education.
That could be a recommendation, right?
Got it,
I
okay.
mean, I don't understand why it's any use in all areas. I mean, as far as I know, in RM3 and in a lot of RM2, there's, where do we have schools? I'm just,
I mean, these recommendations came from the land use committee.
Okay.
So that's why we're bringing them, to you. That's what the committee had recommended in terms of the, removing the barriers. And that was one of them.
I'm all for education. I'm just not sure about
Understand.
why it's encompassing basically the entire city.
Right, so I think we should, from what I'm hearing, we should make a motion favorably, but then make a separate motion strongly encouraging that they eliminate certain. Is that okay with you guys?
I think that can be made as part of your recommendation.
Yeah.
It sounds like you want to recommend in favor of the ordinance.
But
You want to limit the incentives to not include at least the RM1 district. If you want to expand it to RM2 and RM3, you
so.
can let me know. And then you want to make the additional FAR to the comprehensive plan warrant process amendment only applicable to education
Education.
facilities.
Education.
Right. Sounds like a good motion, Michael.
But the first sentence of the analysis says, like, schools and education uses are permitted as a conditional use in all multifamily and commercial.
That's currently right.
Currently, so we're taking out that CUP
Correct.
and then adding other benefits.
Yeah.
So, I guess I'm wondering whether a way to protect the neighborhoods is to leave in the CUP element of it, but while also giving them these other benefits, increased height and space, setbacks, whatever. I think that, to me, I don't like carving out individual zones because there could be.
There could be a school within the
There could be,
residential
yeah.
districts. I agree with
What
you.
if we
So
leave it with existing schools? Because I think it's encompassing everything, isn't it? It's
Yes.
basically giving them carte blanche to do.
It's giving them a lot of new abilities, I guess. And I think I don't think that requiring them to still get a CUP would disincentivize them, schools or whatever, educational facilities from taking advantage of all these benefits.
I think just leaving it to schools.
Keep in mind, right now, even if this passes with an RM1 exemption, a school still could go into the RM1 district. Oh, I'm just saying we want to not sort of incentivize that by giving them these incentives. So it could still happen.
Well, there might be an area in an RM1 district that you want a school, but the key to me is making sure that there's the oversight of the location, the planning, the traffic
just be
patterns.
schools.
You know, the
Well-
traffic, that's how
well,
we're gonna reduce the impact on the neighborhood is by having the CUP process in place. You know, I'm not against carving out the RM1. I mean, I'm just saying that there could be equal applicability to another area that's equally a problem. I just think that the way to fix the whole thing is to leave the CUP element, but I agree, you know, let's incentivize these places, if that's what the commission wants and the community wants, great, but within reason, because what if there's a huge traffic impact?
I agree.
You know, what if they're gonna have a school, you know, outdoor field that has whistles blowing? You know, there's gotta be time frames, time restrictions.
Tweaked, needs to
Well,
be tweaked.
Again,
You also could recommend that you keep the CUP process along with the incentives.
That's what I'm
As
saying.
long as we have the CUP process, then it's open to the public hearings and you're more, and I think that's I think the schools, the way the city's going, we have a lack of schools right now, so we do need to do anything to see some expansion on the education system in the city. But, in most neighborhoods are probably welcoming, but there has to be some sort of input from the neighborhood because it does have an impact. And so I think your recommendation is strong, Jonathan. I think if we, you know, we keep the CUP, as our part of the recommendation, I think that could be
And
preventing.
you don't have to limit the
Right.
areas.
I want to limit to education, since that's what this is supposed to be about.
Right. No, I agree. In our south of Fifth area, we have a private school, and he's building another one, and he went through intensive processes, including here. I understand the incentives, but I do agree that you don't have to shortcut the processes. The processes make sure that the community is
Right.
comfortable with the location. We're in a high-use, commercial, multi-mix residential zone, but they put a school that everyone likes, but it had to go through all the processes, so.
And hard to think that keeping the CUP would desensitize the
Yeah,
schools
and he
to
would
that
appreciate that. He may want to put a 50-foot facility and get extra far right next to one of the two schools that he's building, but he should have to go through some normal processes. in the
So I guess
community.
the question, it sounds like everybody's sort of generally in agreement with that. The question is, are we comfortable sending it with a favorable recommendation and then hoping that the commission will accept our secondary recommendation, which is to leave in the CUP element of it? Or do we send it with an unfavorable for these reasons and make a recommendation to re-implement this ordinance with the, you know, redo
Right.
it with the CUP?
Yeah, it's a funny question because it's kind of the same thing. It's just whether,
It's
in
just
other words, if
wording.
we send it favorably with a recommendation, they don't eliminate the CUP process versus an unfavorable unless they include the CUP process. Does that really make a difference in your opinion?
I think you could make, since your recommendations are the basis for the favorable recommendation, then I would recommend, do it as one motion.
I know, but the question is does it matter whether we say favorable, but we want the CUP process or unfavorable?
What
I'm
you're
unfavorable.
asking for does not really require major surgery, so I think
Right.
it could be favorable with these
Okay.
changes.
Favorable with these changes.
Favorable, provided that the CUP process
Never know when
is
we're allowed
still-
to do that or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
So go ahead and make a motion, Jonathan.
To pass this with a favorable recommendation, except on the condition that they keep the CUP,
Process for all districts.
And that it's limited to only educational
Education.
facilities.
Yeah, I would make that motion regarding limitation for the education facilities, for the comprehensive plan ordinance that we'll take a separate motion on next.
Okay.
Okay.
Second, Jonathan's.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, and that's for both of the amendments, correct?
That'll just be for the PB 25
Oh, 72?
0752.
Right.
And on the second one, which is PB 25-0761, the comprehensive plan floor area ratio incentives, the recommendation would be positive, provided that the incentives are only for educational facilities.
Correct.
Yes.
So we can make another motion on that.
Okay.
I'll make that motion that it's limited to education only.
Okay, second? Someone?
Do we leave in the CUP thing, or, yeah?
That's separate, because
Okay,
now we're
that's
just talking about
separate,
the.
okay.
Saying it's
I'll
separate.
second that.
Okay, Elizabeth seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, unanimously passes. Okay, Planning Board File 250760, minimum landscape requirements for single-family home renovations exceeding the 50% rule.
And this staff report begins on page 69 of the board packages. And this ordinance was referred to the to the planning board on March 19th. And the Land Use and Sustainability Committee reviewed the ordinance on February 20th of this year. So currently, the city ordinance regarding landscaping is more intensive, or more stricter than the county code in terms of landscape requirements when you're exceeding renovations that exceed the 50% value of your house. What this ordinance does is roll back the requirements to meet the county requirements. So if you're doing a renovation exceeding 50%, you don't have to meet the stricter requirements of the city code, but you have to comply with the minimum standards of the county requirements. We are recommending that the planning board transmit this to the city commission with a favorable recommendation. Now, this wouldn't apply to new construction. New construction would still have to meet the stricter landscape requirements. This would be somebody who's doing a renovation that does exceed 50% value, because especially with the value of construction cost, I've seen cases where someone's just renovating their house or removing, old additions that they exceed that 50% value, and then are subject to the same requirements as if they're doing a brand new house.
So if they don't exceed the 50%, then do they have to do anything to landscaping?
It's it's not the same strict requirements.
Okay. I think this is great.
Anyone here in chamber? Anyone in chamber to speak on this? Anyone on Zoom?
There's nobody on Zoom with their hand raised?
Okay. Questions, comments from the board?
I think that's a positive one, yeah. I think there's all only good things for living in an area with so much construction, anything to kind of minimize some of the impact on the neighborhood, so.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay, unanimous. Michael?
Thank you.
Jesus, record time
And
there.
the last item, Planning Board File 250762, Historic Preservation Ad Hoc Committee recommendations.
And Deborah Tackett, our Historic Preservation Officer, may be coming up to answer any questions on this, but I'm going to go through the history and what the summary of this ordinance is. So, let's see, just give me a second. And the staff report begins on page 77 of the board packages. So last year, an ad hoc committee was tasked with a comprehensive review of the city's historic preservation regulations, including possible expansion of the certificate of appropriateness review criteria, as well as recommendations regarding improving and streamlining the review process. The ad hoc committee held 5 public meetings between June 27th of last year and October 15th of last year, and considered extensive comment and public from city staff. All meetings were noticed on the city's website and occurred after 5 p.m. to allow expanded participation. Now, this ordinance is comprehensive and does many things. I'm going to go through just a quick summary. So currently, the city has some of the most extensive certificate of appropriateness review criteria of any city, in the country, with over 50 review criteria. What this ordinance does, as based upon the recommendations, is streamlines and revise the criteria, removing or consolidating redundant criteria, and clarifying the role of the Secretary of Interior standards and guidelines. It allows staff to review additional minor improvements, such as sustainable roofs, fences, and railings. A lot of these were done sort of without expressly being indicated in the code. This sort of does establish that as being explicitly allowed for staff review. It does clarify and define requirements for preliminary concept and detailed approvals. It does raise the threshold for a transportation analysis from 5,000 square feet to 50,000 gross square feet to ease the burdens on smaller projects. It does allow administrative approval for larger additions for single-family homes in historic districts that are not visible from a right-of-way with neighbor notification. It does allow for when applications before the Historic Preservation Board are continued. It no longer requires a redundant newspaper notice for continued HPB items. This is consistent with other land use board applications. For example, if an application comes to the planning board and the board continues it for a month or two, it doesn't then require another newspaper notice. This would apply the same process to Historic Preservation Board review. It does allow a formal process for removing historic status per the county standards regarding incentives for historic preservation. It expands the ad valorem tax exemption eligibility from single-family homes to also include historic multifamily and commercial buildings. And it does extend the zoning incentives that are afforded for architecturally significant homes. That allows them to be extended to single-family homes in historic districts. This, for example, is if somebody wants to add on to their historic home or architecturally significant home, they can get a relaxation in terms of the setbacks and things like lot coverage and unit size. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Again, we have Deborah Tackett, our Historic Preservation Officer, who was part of that committee in terms of staff and can answer any detailed questions.
Okay. Anyone in here to speak on this? Anyone on Zoom?
And there's nobody on Zoom with their hand raised.
Okay. You want to speak?
I haven't been sworn in. Do I have to be sworn
You're
in?
good.
for
This is legislative, so you're
Okay,
good.
excellent. Good morning, members of the board. Michael summarized the ordinance very well. The committee did meet for many months, and I just wanted to reiterate that all of their recommendations were unanimous. So it was broadly supported at the committee, all of the changes. The most significant changes are really the ad valorem tax exemption program expansion and some of the administrative review, although they're not significant scope of work that we could approve administratively. I think those two are probably the most significant in terms of the changes. A lot of this is also just cleanup, removing redundancies, removing erroneous criteria. I don't know if Michael said that we also are including a provision to remove historic designations. That is required by Miami-Dade County. So we are required to follow. There are minimum standards for our historic preservation ordinance, and we had been notified by the county that that was one area, although we are in very good standing, that was one area that we were not compliant with.
I noticed that, and I was going to ask that question, so thank you.
Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions, Keith?
So, in summary, it's to streamline what can be quite arduous to get rid of buildings that are falling apart that really aren't, that are borderline historic, and cleaning up so that people don't have to go through multiple hoops just to,
Yes, the idea would
revise
to
their
be
building,
encourage renovation.
yeah, we're encouraging it instead of discouraging it.
Correct.
I think that's a great idea.
I think one of the biggest changes is expanding our ability to review changes to railings. Historically, we have a lot of, and we see that all the time, there's so many permits for railings.
Yeah.
And so I think that is probably one of the one of the elements that affects more buildings than any other element.
Yeah, especially we're seeing going through the 40-year or 50-year recertification process, some of the older buildings, particularly from the 1960s through the early 1980s, have, very heavy masonry railings, and most of those are having structural issues, and we're at this point taking those through the Historic Preservation Board process, where for some condominium buildings, going through the process can be quite stressful.
Yeah, I sat on the committee, so, I think even though it's maybe somewhat minor, but I think one of the most important things we did was eliminate some of the things that must go in front of the HPV and giving staff the ability to approve a lot more things at staff level. Because I remember, I think one of our first meetings, you had said that, you would kind of talk to people after they read through all the criteria, and they're like, well, it's like they're reading a novel. There's just so much, it's overwhelming. So we did try to clean that up a bit just to make it so when somebody comes into the city and wants to do something and they look at the criteria, they think, okay, we can manage that. And we also tried to make it a little bit easier moving forward for small projects and big projects.
I know you're on that committee, very cool. Any other questions, or someone want to move it?
Make a motion.
Move it.
Okay, thanks for coming in, I appreciate
You're
it.
welcome, my
Thanks,
pleasure, thank
Um,
you, have a
All right,
great
so
day.
Elizabeth moved it.
Second.
Second, Yehiel. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Nope.
All right. Well, that must be a record. I told you an hour, we're good.
Are you serious?
Right on time, exactly 10 o'clock.
Huh?
Really?
Exactly 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Our next meeting is June 10th.
How's that agenda looking?
Too bad.
Huh?
It should be a short agenda as well.
Okay. Trying to figure out what meeting I can miss for vacation.
We're only going to have 5 board members for July, just to be clear. We only have five board members for our July 1st meeting. July 1.
Oh, boy. Who?
That was the one you're gonna miss, huh?
But I think my.
What happens if I'm gone too? I didn't realize that. We're adjourned, by the way. We're adjourned. You can turn off the.